Just to be respectful of time, we will get things started. Welcome to today's webinar for the Enhancing School Capacity to Address Youth Violence Program. My name is Ricardo Goodridge, as many of you may know, with LISC, the Local Initiative Support Corporation. And I am one of the training and technical assistance leads for this program. And we are excited to see so many of you in attendance, and I see the number growing as we get into today's presentation on collaborative connections. Now, as you are joining us, if you can, please put your name and organization affiliation in the chat, just so we can get a sense of who's here. So just your name and your organization, that would be fantastic. And I would also encourage you off the top that we do have a Q&A and a chat feature throughout the presentation. If you have questions, please do utilize that. We'll be as interactive as we can with our presenters and let them know that their questions were their appropriate times for breaks as well. Now, before I introduce our speakers, a few things. I wanted to let you know that a copy of this recording will be available on our website in the coming days, along with any resources that are shared today. I know that's always a popular question, but know that that will be forthcoming. And also to look forward to some more of these engaging webinars in the near future as well. That said, I wanted to take a few minutes just to level set and to acknowledge some of the feedback that we have received from sites. This grant program is premised on the principle that meaningful engagement with family members and caregivers is essential for effectively serving students and addressing school violence. That said, many of you between the different cohorts have also shared the challenges of getting caregivers to engage. That may include building trust, sometimes having intermittent contact for extended periods of times with caregivers, but all the while trying to balance these realities and provide, quality education and services and supports to students. So we understand those frustrations, and in view of that, we were very fortunate to have our colleagues with the Spokane Public Schools that we thought could provide some grounding and highlight some of the approaches and tools that might be of assistance to you as you are working through some of these challenges. So joining us today are our Chief Family and Community Engagement Officer, Oscar Harris, and Director of Community Relations and Diversity Training, Nicole Jenkins-Rosencrantz. Now, they are versed in culturally responsive family and community engagement, restorative practices, and I would say the overall development and deployment of custom supports and programs for students and their families. And so I think they will be a really great resource for us today. And so without further ado, I am going to hand things over to Oscar and Nicole.
Thank you, Ricardo, so much. Nicole, did you want to go first? Okay.
No.
I knew what your response was, but I was going to poke you started. So all the guests in particular could know the type of relationship that we have in particular as far as working professional and et cetera. So I am so happy to be here, Ricardo, so happy to be able to be present personally. And I'm going to let Nicole speak for herself, of course, because she definitely can, right? I am so excited to be here in particular, to be able to talk about a topic that not only am I passionate about, but it is one in particular that I've spent a lot of time, and my dissertation, it is actually centers on the particular topic at hand. And even within my professional career, it centers on this ideal of community engagement or collaborative connections between partnering with caregivers for success in particular. And I could share just briefly, have the opportunity to work in various settings in the community, worked with Department of Corrections on some of the programming that we did to help transition people from out of institutions back into the community with high levels of success rate. I've been working within Spokane Public Schools for almost 2 decades now. Had the opportunity also to just launch mentoring programs in the area and et cetera. So that's just a little bit. So I'll pass it over to Nicole, and we're just going to keep talking and have some fun today. It's a Friday. So, all right.
Absolutely. Hello. So Nicole Jenkins-Rosencrantz. I feel very honored to be in this space with you today. I'm going to ask for grace in advance. I have a cold, but I'm going to do my best. So I'm going to kind of co-sign what Oscar is saying, give some examples in our work, but he'll be doing the majority of the talking today. A little bit about me. So my history was I worked for juvenile court in various roles from, I started as a juvenile corrections officer. And when I ended my career there 17 years later, I was the supervisor in the diversion program. And so then I hopped over to the school district, with the hope to, I guess we want to say, explode the school to prison pipeline, create some innovative programming to keep our youth in school instead of, shipped to the juvenile system. And with that, when I came to the school originally 6 years ago, I came as a community partnerships manager. So a lot of the examples that I will give today will talk about that work as we have kind of been the bridge between the school district and community. Thank you.
Cool. And something I should also prep us for is that Nicole and I both believe in the power of collective knowledge, especially when it comes of the experiential nature. And so what we're looking for, even though we're going to be sharing different things within the context of Spokane, and I'll be sharing relevant research, and we'll also be given, anecdotal type of information and stories that parallel it, that verify the research. We're also looking to garner some information from you that are on here, because I believe that, at the core of who I am, I don't believe that no one is better than anyone else, but we all are better for each other. And so within that context, that's kind of how we engage. That's kind of how we present a little bit. Any knowledge base that we have, in particular, working with the diverse systems in our area, we more than are open to sharing those things in particular. But I'll say again, it is a high probability that you may catch me in a conference and you may share something during this particular presentation, and I'm going to use a polite term. I'm going to commandeer it. And if I don't give you credit for it, you can see me after the conference and we'll settle our differences and all that stuff. So I'm saying, please feel safe to share, but I may take it on for myself, just to inform you. And I was going to say I'm kidding, but I'm just serious a little bit. And you can do the same, right? You can do the same. Just want to let you know that. So in jumping in today, Nicole and I talked a little bit about who we are, what we do in particular. But I can tell you, being within the school district, being in senior leadership, fortunate to be one of the first African Americans to be at this level of leadership, it's comparable to an assistant superintendent of a school district in particular. My background and my journey within the school district is I've always worked in intervention, prevention, and engaging, family and community, and doing it when it wasn't, and it still ain't popular, but doing it when it definitely wasn't popular. And I was well versed in being able to work in the community before I came to the school district, right? I've been a co-occurring therapist, right? I've worked in treatment facilities. I've worked, I test other systems. I've worked across systems in particular. So I was able to garner a body of knowledge similar to Nicole as well, that actually lent itself to us being able to build better culturally responsive bridges between the community and the school. And now after Nicole, I'm thinking after 6 or 7 years of developing our department, as well as leading an initiative around family and community engagement, we have seen, I would say we've been so fortunate to see, I'll say, certain types of successes and being able to open up doors so schools can actually receive the services that they need to better serve, the families in particular. Because we're going to get into it a little bit today, in particular, even when we begin to start looking at our agenda, we're going to get into some of the key challenges that oftentimes as community partners face, as well as school districts face. And in particular, Nicole and I spent so much time talking about how can we troubleshoot to kind of break down silos to a great degree, but also how do we work together to help each party, each stakeholders group to really be able to comprehend and understand the culture of each other's system. Because Nicole and I have had a lot of conversations about what do it mean to be in a school district culture that says, we want you, we want you, we need you, we need you. Violence in our school, we need some support, we need some support. Then when community organizations sometimes come, knock on the door and say, dun, 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 we're here. All of a sudden what happened is like, wait. You didn't knock on the right door, right? Oh, you came on the wrong day. Oh, and guess what? No, we don't like how you talk to our office staff. Well, in fact, we don't want bad publicity around our school. All of these things come into play that end up lending itself to kind of giving mixed messages that sometimes can come from school systems. So my hope and our desire is to give a little information that we've discovered in that area as well through our real life example. But I'll say again, even looking at our agenda, I love and I stick with a lot of research, because research oftentimes with many of you, I know you're extremely skillful on here. Research validate what you already know, but it also puts you into a place to where we can begin to start replicating the great things that you are doing and that we are doing together. So hopefully we're going to, throughout this process, definitely accent some actionable steps around building partnerships as well as drawing stakeholders in and all of that. So, and also, I didn't put it out there, Ricardo, but we have a chat function, so you can feel free to put things in the chat. If you give me kudos to something, hey, say kudos, accent that. If you have valuable insight, which you do, if you have information in particular you want to share during the presentation, please share it in there. Nicole and I are not fixated on whether or not we get through the PowerPoint. We are fixated on whether or not you're going to be able to glean information, and we're going to be able to glean information that's going to improve our practice, as well as, and hopefully, I'm digressing a little bit, but I'm still on target. Hopefully, we're going to help to validate you in some regards concerning your why. And we know that the why is the reason why you're doing what you're doing. I believe that many of you on here is not because of a paycheck, right? But you're trying to have impact. And since you're focusing on impact, that's drawing you deeper into these conversations. So I'll say definitely our desire is for, to help in your ventures in terms of when you're trying to improve upon those things. But let's dive into this. We're going to be looking to explore how to engage stakeholders, as well as part of that is going to be explore effective communication techniques and engagement approaches. We're going to hopefully spend a lot more time on this, because this has been the area I think of great frustration and great challenge, as I know we've talked with community partners. Nicole, did you have anything to add in there before I dive into it? All right. So, importance of caregiver involvement. The research is clear, as many of you probably already know, that when caregivers are involved in the process, education process, or even when it comes to organization, it ends up helping with the outcome. In the education setting, very much so academic achievement, attendance, overall student success, as well as reduction in violence can actually be linked to caregiver involvement. I am thinking about one particular study that was, I'll say it's fascinating, but I know many individuals here are going to be like, no, duh, I knew it would happen that way. That was a bullying issue, research study on a bullying issue that was happening at a middle school. And the middle school, I'll say through their brilliance, they decided to start a program, and the key staff of the program was the caregivers of the individuals who was guilty of doing a lot of bullying. And so can you imagine the type of success they got when they brought the caregivers in to launch this program? And guess what? The school knew, whoever within that ingenuity knew, that sometimes at the heart of getting at some of our issues around violence, bullying, and etc., the caregiver is oftentimes out of the mix. And there can be generational trauma that end up producing those environments or situation to where our students would actually perpetuate the behavior, the bullying, all the aggressive behaviors that actually came from the previous generation, their family in particular. So by being able to bring them in, put structures around them, teaching them about the intricacies of what bullying does, what it doesn't do, as well as allowing caregivers, some of them, to heal through that process, because many of you already know that it's not uncommon that the major bully within a situation was bullied at one particular time in their life, and they decided to take power and took it to another level. So hopefully that's something we're going to look at. Caregiver being central to what's going on. How do we invite our clients, for some of you, into this process? So research and trends. We're going to talk about family perceptions, school staff perception, as well as community organizations perceptions, because all of these three buckets, they are not just relevant, but they really speak to the realities and the truth that we hold. All right, Nicole?
Well, going back to the caregiver piece,
Mhm.
one thing that I have found in these conversations, if we're approaching all the time, talking about their child being a problem or being the issue, of course they're going to be defensive or they're going to stop answering. And so what I find is talking about, you're the expert on your child. How can we walk alongside you? And really kind of putting it back on them that they're the expert and that we're just here to accent what they're already doing. And I find that like from the very beginning brings the room down. And then they're willing to continue talking. Well, I'm not sure. And then you can throw in your pieces of, this is how we can walk alongside you. And then please tell me if you think this would work, with your child. And so sometimes the approach is really figuring out how to level the playing field, because they are already, no matter if you're a community resource or you're a school resource, they're already feeling like there's a hierarchy in the relationship. So really making sure that we lift the caregivers up, that no, they are actually the expert in this situation, and we just want to walk alongside.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nicole. And I think that is definitely a piece that we're going to be going into a little bit later on, even when we come to strategies about helping caregivers. I am, and it's actually true, I share with individuals that I'm considered, and many of you may like the movie, I'm considered the equalizer in a lot of situations. You can ask Nicole or anyone. People absolutely love me across the school district. But one administrator did confess to me that, hey, Oscar, we absolutely love you. But we know when you show up in our building, we're going to have to change a decision that we done made. So can you show up sometime without, because our staff gets stressed out when you show up. And I was like, why? I'm such a nice person. So what comes into play is often I consider myself to be the equalizer. I'm in a position of power, not so I can sit and build my ego. My ego is healthy enough, if you can't tell. I love me some me. Y'all make it already tell. But I also know at the end of the day that we're dealing with generations of individuals who feel powerless, right? Who in situations who don't know how to navigate structures, who don't know how to navigate systems. So I personally see it my role to actually be in situations to bring education to support the overarching goal of everyone, and that's the success of that child involved. And so how do we get there? We get there by paying attention to, and I get there personally by paying attention to family perception, school staff perception, community organization perception, and building plans sometimes on the fly to address the needs that's going on. Because sometimes I'm in situations to where caregiver parent may be with an advocacy group. And so the power differential may shift a little bit. And so sometimes I have to go into those environments as well and settle things down to a great degree and help everybody to refocus on what we all are doing this for, our why behind everything, right? So looking at the research, something that was discovered is very much so barriers to collaboration from caregivers have often been language barriers, time constraint, and them being unfamiliar with school system when they try to collaborate effectively. Everybody on the line is probably saying, yes, that makes sense, especially when we look at the various type of population we look at. Within the Spokane public school context, Nicole, help me, we have over 200 different sovereign nations represented. In the region of Spokane, we have probably over 300 or 400 sovereign nations represented. We have when it comes to rural Native populations, and we have tribes around the city in particular. So that's another nuance that we are interfacing with on a regular basis as well. How do we show up respectively, as well as being culturally empathetic toward as much as possible, as well as cultural responsiveness or as cultural sensitive to what's going on, and seeking out to get answers and have people to help us to navigate, such as cultural brokers. Also, family perception. According to Epstein's framework, despite challenges families are experiencing, they value the partnership in the education process, according to this framework. And when looking at effective communication, Dr. Johnson talked about the importance of establishing communication channels between schools and et cetera, which also resonates with Epstein's framework. You're going to see me constantly allude back to certain type of frameworks, and I'll be introducing them because I have found in my experience, in my study, that frameworks do something in particular that we'll talk about later on in this discussion. School staff perception. A piece of me is kind of laughing at when I think about school staff perception and some of the conversations that I have to have, and being in community circles. And it's amazing how I can embody a whole system. Some individuals will look at me and say, "You school district." I was like, wow, that's tough. That's tough. I was like, I shop at the same grocery store, right? As you do. I would say I go to the barber shop, but I'd be lying because I ain't got too much to deal with that area anyway. But I go to the same spaces and stuff. But I am that institution in particular. And I own it, right? Because I'm perceived to be that person in a position of power. But I also try to make sure I level set with individuals and say that within school system, school staff, a lot of them expect to be attacked. School staff are in relationship with other individuals who are not school staff, so they get all the comment. So it produces this interesting thing when it comes to culture. But let's look at some research. Research shows that school staff often encounter challenges reaching out to families, different cultural norms, varying levels of family and community engagement. Many researchers have validated that oftentimes the different cultural norms around whose responsibility it is to educate the child often comes into play and prevent that from being effective partnership. Alignment, this research is in alignment with Epstein's framework because they actually see the framework as being a valuable guide for enhancing family community engagement and for helping them to navigate these particular challenges around cultural norms, because later on you can get more into Epstein framework, but it has typologies that help you to be able to conceptualize family and community engagement outside of a spaghetti feed, outside of a musical performance from some elementary school children, which I love to go see the smiling faces, but I am into music, and I'm just going to say that. I'll just say that. And also supportive learning environment. Dr. Wilson talked about school staff perceive family involvement as essential to the supportive learning environment. Someone may be saying they see it as essential why won't they involve families even more in the processes? And that goes along with the culture, that goes along with the tradition, because we know our education system across the United States is over 100 years old. And for all intent purposes, many of the mechanism structures that was put in place 100 years ago are yet in place. And when we began to start thinking about our DEIB, I know that may be a cuss word for some individuals, but when we begin to start looking at those particular elements, that original system was not designed to deal with those elements, right? It was not designed to deal with those elements. Hence, some of the challenges that we yet deal with, the lack of proficiency among school staff. So next, let's go to community organization perception. Dr. Martinez talked about community organizations face challenges in coordinating effort with school district due to differing priorities and limited resources. Nicole, I feel like this is almost a place you may want to jump in a little early. I don't know. We can come back later, but yes.
Mhm. Yeah, I think of, so when I first started talking about community partnerships, so when I showed up, I was told, okay, so we know we have horrible relationships with our partners, and so we just need you to fix that. And so, and I had a list of partners to just start to get to know. And so, as we know in everything, relationship is key. And the common theme, that came out from all of my meetings was one, of course, funding. And then the other one is we have all of these great ideas. We know all of the concerns that the schools have, and we can help, but we're not seen as the experts. And we can't really get into the door. So, how do we get into the door? And so, it really was about building relationships and then really starting like creating a new foundation of, let's really have a clear understanding of, so for instance, in developing our MOUs, memorandums of understandings, we really talked about, so what is your, I always call it the magic wand. What is your magic wand thing? Like if we could do all the things, what would it be? And so I have them actually write out all of the things that they would wish for. And then with that, we can look through and I can have the honest conversation of, oh yes, I see we can do this, this, and this. This part might be a little, we're unsure about that, but we'll keep that in the background of something we hope to get to. And so we were able to really have honest conversations and then also asking, what are the expectations for you from the school? So you need a data agreement, obviously, because that's how you're going to continue to get grant funding. And so we need to be able to share data. What else do you need? Do you need us to show up at your fundraisers and, have a table there and really be supportive? So really, the honest conversation about what is needed and what is expected and what we can and can't do, that was the biggest key. The other piece was I get to be the person who, I'll give an example of principals who maybe don't want an organization to come in, but they wouldn't tell them. So they would just keep meeting with them and keep meeting with them, right? And so, and then all of a sudden they would come back to me, the organization, and be like, well, Nicole, they told me to come to you. And really it was, they needed me to tell them the no. And so again, honest conversations, like let's continue talking about how we can fit what you're trying to do into this partnership. And then the other way is, of course, folks come to the school district because this is where the kids are. But how can we maybe funnel after school programs to your program? So again, what does that partnership look like? So I'll pause there.
Nope, love it. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you very much so. Going into looking at alignment with the Epstein framework, what we're talking about, the challenges are, I can say some strategies of being able to resolve them can be linked up with the Epstein framework. Because it become a valuable tool for the foster partnership in addressing student needs. And within Epstein framework, it talked about the importance of two-way communication. And so we'll get into that a little bit later. And inclusivity, the framework it encompasses diverse stakeholders in student education. And that is something that I can say has probably been a challenge. Oftentimes when we're trying to resolve issues, we're trying to resolve problems. And I'll say even personally, I'm known for saying that whenever I'm stressed out, I have a tendency, and something is not working, I have a tendency to try to do more of it. Instead of saying that, you know what, there's a lens that I'm missing. Hence, me starting out saying that experiential knowledge of everybody collectively on the call and on this webinar is important, because you may have what I need. And it may not be much. That's what I've noticed. It may not be much. Nicole, I've seen it on countless occasions when she was talking to community partners, being able to kind of share what school staff, because of the culture, wouldn't share, help them right away, right? They think that some of them thought they need to hit the door even harder. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to get in there. It's like, no. It's like, you're not going to get in there. I was like, literally, you're not going to get in there. You're going to be meeting, and then you're going to get moved to the stage that I love that happens. I don't like to participate, but many of you may know about this, but the meeting to schedule another meeting phenomenon, I don't know if y'all know that, right? We're going to schedule another meeting until someone gets tired, right? Until someone gets tired. And that shouldn't be when we're trying to figure out how we're going to better support staff. And with me even saying that, partially joking, but at the same time, I do believe in the philosophy, go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. I believe in that. So I practice that as well. So just to let you know. So challenges in partnerships. We're going to continue in that vein because I think that that's an area that I know we spend a lot of stuff, a lot of time with. We have to take time to talk about the specific challenges that are hindering the success of the partnership. We started already with what Nicole said in particular. I said cultural differences and et cetera, but we're going to go into it a little bit. Cultural language barriers can create misunderstandings and hinder establishment of trust and collaboration between schools, caregivers, and I would say community partners as well. I said cultural and language barriers. We know that within every culture is not a monolith. So there are differences that happen on a regular basis, even within same cultures that we would see it, that can prevent the building of trust, which hinders the ability to collaborate effectively in my mind in many regards. I don't think trust is the only element to lead to collaboration because I think you can have some adversarial collaborations, right? I think stuff can happen there, but when there's trust there is a mutual benefit that comes from it. I'm thinking about personally, sometimes being a cultural broker for certain families and certain individuals. I'm thinking about mothers who I've had show up in the schools, school districts, and one I'm kind of smiling about. She showed up in the school building ready to handle business. That's all I'm gonna say. She was ready to handle business, and never had a report of what happened with this particular caregiver. And parents showed up and she tried to call first, no one called, and her grandbaby ended up texting her about what the teachers and the students did, and so she showed up ready to handle business. So upon me hearing about the situation, immediately I said, I want to get involved in this. No, I'm gonna get involved. Heard her story, heard the pattern that led up to the incidents, the altercation, and to where she ended up being no trespass from school, so she couldn't be there. After I heard the situation and everything that went on, I worked with our campus safety department as well as other staff and took time for us all to listen to what the concerns were and definitely shared with her that her actions were not okay. And she knew they was not okay, and she had a sense of shame. And what she did pretty much showed up at the office and demanded to speak with people and was saying that she was ready to whoop you know what, all this kind of stuff on something. That's what she did. After meeting with her and discovering that she was ignored, she was frustrated, she was upset because she didn't know if her grandbaby was safe. Right, it made total sense. We was able to do some working behind the scenes, as well as took it as a moment to actually teach around cultural nuances as well as various other things. I've seen countless situations. One thing that I don't personally accept is I typically don't take firsthand accounts of anything. Sometimes people try to tell me that that parent is dealing with mental health challenge. And my response is to myself is, aren't we all? That's what I say pretty much, right? We all are dealing with something and it's all relative and subjective. So I would actually typically call up a parent, meet with them face to face, bring my team in and say, let's get me more information because I can't settle on this person has mental health challenges. This is also part of research, by the way. I can't settle on the fact that someone's saying that they have a mental health challenges, and that means that that's going to warrant any staff to treat them outside of what our mission and vision is for our organization. That doesn't sit well, and neither does it sit well with Nicole. But how do we get there? How do we begin to start establishing trust and collaboration? Something that I say in particular, even while I'm transitioning, when we talk about the next thing, is I've shared with administrators, because many of them, they love trust. They want parents to trust them and to love them. And I share with them, I say at the end of the day, one of your greatest compliments you're going to ever receive is for a parent to say, I don't like you, but I respect you because you do right by my kids. That's what you're looking for. I need people to like me and everything. You're setting yourself up. Forget it. You got hundreds of people, thousands of people you're trying to support. You cannot get there, but you can get to the place by doing right by the child, the student, to where at the least they'll respect you for what you're doing. Nicole, you had something on that one? The next one is kind of yours in particular, though, Nicole. Research highlights the challenges of limited resource, both in schools, among caregivers and community partners.
I think one of where we found success in building relationship with our community partners is they used to show up saying, this is what we want to provide, and you should find the money for us to come in and do all of this work with you. And so what we started doing is pursuing grants together. And with that, we were able to get the financial piece for them to do the programming. And then also it made it easier to establish the MOU and what the work together would look like, because we built it together from the very beginning. And so again, that helps with the relationship and with the trust building, and then understanding from the very beginning what everyone is going to be providing. So that's a major one. And then as far as caregivers, what I find interesting as far as resources, and when I talked about the caregivers being the experts on their children, we also have parent advocacy groups that we walk alongside with in our work. And so, you know, when they're bringing to us what the concerns are, what the school district is not doing, we are able then to share with them, you know, so here are some ideas we have. Do you also have ideas? And so, for instance, we built a restorative intervention to suspensions and expulsions program, but that came out of parent advocates walking alongside us and saying the school needed to change some things. And so with that, again, together we can build better, and establishing that relationship from the beginning.
Cool, cool. I am looking at the poll that is going on. Yes, chime in. Thank you, Ricardo. People are chiming in terms of what are the challenges that they are facing. Limited time, financial resources, lack of support. Limited time is at the top right now. That is the top. I'm just watching it a little bit. It's kind of cool watching it. So just let you know, I'm just trying to watch it for a little bit. See if everybody.
Oscar, Nicole, I hope I didn't interrupt your group, but it was too good of a slide to not just really.
No, I love it. I love it. No, I love it. You did not interrupt my groove in particular. I'm getting feedback.
I'm curious. Yes, and in the chat, can we talk about a little bit more about what the limited time? So the limited time to develop the relationship, the limited time to search for funding. What does the limited time go with?
I see a limited time to get
to look for money. Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, yes, yes. That is very good. On that one, definitely, Nicole, that is where we're looking. The money's right. There's multiple sources that you're trying to look at. The local effort depends on what's happening within your community. Are you resource rich, financially more rich than other places? Federal grants, right? Looking at federal grant cycle, which we're starting to enter into right now. That's going to go for another month or two or three or so. Those types of things. What happened at the state level? And even with the limited time is how do you even broker the partner relationships to have the proper relationship to have a strong application, because it's a limited amount of money and most people are looking to it. That's the challenging thing that I've seen about when it comes to resources, especially in the area to where this work is so important. So often, this is unintentional, I know, but there end up being created this competitive type thing that end up messing with program development and implementation. And we know that, and this is something that I've seen, sometimes the more passionate the organization is, the less mechanism they have in place and less time they have to actually go after funding. And so I was very grateful to see some initiatives that had been geared toward looking at organizations who didn't necessarily receive funding in the past. But that's great. Was there anybody else who chimed in? That was a great, very great input.
So the limited time during the school day to allow partners in to do things like groups and support mentoring. So one of the ways we have communicated that to work with school staff is You know, us doing a 10-minute pull out with that youth to talk to them is actually what's going to settle them to be successful in your class. And so again, reframing the, you know, you're struggling with some disruptions, keeping them in the class without their mentor, you know, communicating with them, is probably you're doing things the way they've always been done, and it's maybe not as successful if you wanted it to be. However, if we can come in and just spend this 10-15 minutes with this student, we can help settle them for the rest of the day. The other thing we've done is do some groups during the lunch time, and again, not every day, because of course they want the social time, you know, with their friends, but maybe once a week or every other week there's group mentoring during lunch. Yeah, those are just a couple of my thoughts.
No, absolutely. No, thank you everybody for chiming in particular. Definitely that limited time, more work than time. Yes, absolutely. And I think everybody on the call will echo that particular thing, is that there is so much work and not enough time. Hence why I lean in heavy to when it comes to partnership. That's why when I get a report of any community partner that comes to the school that's a viable candidate being somehow through the bureaucracy being turned around, right? This just happened yesterday. Was meeting with the organization. Nicole, I haven't even got a chance to talk to you about this yet. I am, but a soccer organization that serves 4 to 10-year-olds for totally free, pays for it and everything, got caught up in the bureaucracy and it's like, wait a minute. And the individual who's leading the charge used to be a principal assistant working at one of our highest impoverished schools. And so I was like, wait a minute, this makes no sense to me. You've got no traction after almost a year for a free program and people ain't got to pay nothing. But no. That's bureaucracy. That is negative, right? That is negative. So being able to connect with him, take time. Initially, I don't meet with individuals because we have, like any system, we have departments that take care of things. But sometimes bridging that gap, getting back to the point, is we don't have time as a school to meet those social emotional needs of students at that level. We don't have time to bring in the proper intervention and prevention work that is necessary. We got some great programming. I'm thinking about the UMAD Bro program that just graduated some students around this, teaching them about this gang prevention, violence prevention, and all of that. And later on, we can talk about how that program got into school and how it's done developed. And the person who leads is a member of our staff. He has a whole classroom. He can get kids out at any given time. And he comes from a history of gang violence out of LA. He's known pretty much national for his work that he does. But later on, I can talk a little bit about how he got to that place, because a lot of it had to do with him, who he is, his skill set, and his brilliance as well. And consistent results for over 8 or 9 years, not in relations to just the violence prevention, but he learned system well, and he navigate. Now every school wants him. Every school wants him in the building because he knows about those cultural nuances and stuff. And they know when he comes in, he's going to come in and always focus on the best interest of the child while not taking sides with the schools as well as caregivers and community organizations. So we can talk a little bit more about that, what that can look like. Cool. I see another question in there. Can anyone recommend an anti-bullying program that a probation officer can facilitate in a tribal school that is culturally relevant? I think that's a question for the whole group. That's a question for the whole group. So if you have one in particular, I'll say as a group, please chime in and put it in the chat function. And what we can do, if you want, I think it's Brett, if you want, we can, process a little bit and maybe look into our networks here and see what individuals are doing in this area, and possibly get the information to Ricardo and get it back to you. We can do that on our end. Okay. Do we have any others? I'll say, Ricardo, this is great. I like this poll. I'm gonna have to use that. See, thank you. You just gave me something that I am commandeering from you. I will be.
We'll put a few more in there if it makes sense too. So just keep going.
Okay. I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that. Cool. So what we're looking at this area, right? I love the limited time. And one thing that I'm going to keep harping on is that puts us into a place to where, one, I'll say this, the valuable resource that everybody's providing, it is a niche resource. Everybody can't do it. And that's something that I have to make sure I echo out there. Everybody can't do the work with the level of fidelity and effectiveness that you can do it. And so our hope, and definitely I am trying to brainstorm, trying to think about ways that we can duplicate the effort as much as possible, as well as solicit other resources from other entities that maybe can handle some certain level of low-level crises. Because I can say, as far as a resource, even with the person that we had, everybody, Nicole can attest to this, everybody would reach out to him for everything. If the name gang, if the word gang came up, they was reaching out for him. If racial incidents came up, they was reaching out for him. If family conflict came up, they was reaching out for him. So Nicole had to pretty much pull back and say, you know what, we got to disaggregate all of these referrals, and we got to look at also the individual brilliance of other team members and begin to start allowing for him to pull back, because we got him so wrapped up in lower tiered important stuff, right, that he can't effectively keep engaging the high tiered stuff without burning out. And so I encourage any and every organization to begin to start thinking about disaggregating and whether or not there may be a partnership. Sometimes, because of the lack of resource, it doesn't exist. And I'll say my heart goes out definitely for the individuals who are the end all be all. And I'd say I'm grateful that you stay centered on your why, because I believe that our passion gives us energy, and our passion allows for ingenuity to come up. So next. Oh, let me go back. Oh. Common issue that happened is mismatched expectation between schools, caregivers, and community partners regarding the roles and responsibilities. Nicole, I think this is you as well.
Yeah, so I keep saying the same thing, but it really is having that clear, direct communication from the very beginning is what makes the difference. And then having follow-up meetings, like, are we still on the same page? As in all relationships, you have to keep pouring into them. I think in particular, we had an organization that does a lot of things in the community, yet the personalities of the staff weren't necessarily working well with the school staff. And instead of anyone telling them that there were some issues, like, they just all of a sudden were like, nope, we're not partnering on anything, and left the organization really confused as to what was going on. And so I had to have the conversation and tell them, I think this year we should use it as a relationship building year. And so we can reset expectations and show up in different ways, whether it's the school district that needs to show up a little bit different, but also the organization that needs to show up different. And so again, the unaligned expectations, that's usually where the biggest conflict is. And so from the very beginning, the building it correctly is really at the very beginning. And then again, so I'm a direct communicator, so I love direct communication. And I know not everybody's a direct communicator, but when you're starting feeling as an organization that things aren't aligning, that you have the MOU that shows what is expected of you and what is expected of the district, and if those aren't aligning, really call those meetings and really have those conversations. I find that a lot of time it really is just a misunderstanding. So it's not that necessarily someone wants to, like, the school is trying to not do what they said they would do. They just have a lot going on, and they may just kind of forget what they said. So sometimes they need those reminders. And so I just think, again, communication, direct communication, that's key.
Absolutely. And Nicole will tell you that I'm not considered to be a direct communicator, because sometimes I have to become political. So it's possible I can't talk hours about nothing. I'm just going to tell you, it's a gift. But frustration and tension, to Nicole's point, I say let it be an indicator for a pause. Let it only be an indicator. As soon as you see frustration and tension from your staff as your community partner, as well as you sense it from school staff in particular, let it be a pause moment to go back and reflect upon what this partnership actually is. Because something that someone brought up to me even yesterday about concerning one of our other programs, that I know is very much can come into play that I don't even process as much is that we oversee our Rebecca truancy program as well for our district. And there was a individual who managed an apartment complex where kids was not going to school or not going to school. And the manager, because of their own past experience, they are so terrified of truancy laws and programming. So they're not in a place to where they're trying to look. They're also a case manager because of the type of facility it is. They're not trying to enforce it, and they're trying to find ways to support families, but also because of their own trauma, they don't know how to engage in a situation. So with that particular person, I can tell you what the outcome is in particular. I coach my staff on pretty much meeting with them, educating them about the truancy program as it relates to our department's philosophy and how we navigate and meet with them until they're settled enough to where the tension and potential frustration can be resolved before we move forward, because friction, that friction that comes from frustration and tension will automatically derail or stop any momentum, and neither parties get the opportunity to achieve what they're there to do.
And relationship isn't sending emails, right? So, so face to face, and even the time constraints. Even if you got to hop on a what is this, Teams or a Zoom, I find that also the back and forth. Sometimes I'm called in to help with partnerships after there's been a lot of back and forth in emails that I'm not very excited to intervene in on either side. And so, you know, as in everything, you know, relationship, human relationship.
Touche. Another element, training. Lack of training and support. Research suggests that both educators, caregivers, community partners may lack adequate training and support to engage in effective partnerships. I put the who, the what, and the how. Just simply, many of you are familiar with that particular. How do we work through the who? Who should we be properly partnering with? Often what I get to share with some community partners who are frustrated, when they tell me what their goals were or are, and my immediate question is, who are you working with? And quite often when I find out frustrated moments, what is happening is that they are actually interfacing with the wrong department, right? Bureaucracies, right? And sometimes departments will be like, yes, this is my department because they said this, right? Because they said soccer. And it's like, yes, they said soccer, but they said violence prevention, using soccer as an intervention for violence prevention. That's not your fullness of different things. Yes, what they're looking at violence prevention, so it should have been this department. So when community partners are able to let me know that, we're able to redirect them, get them to the right place. What? I just talked about that. What are you doing? What are you bringing forth? What is the main thing that you're trying to accomplish? What is your mission, and et cetera, aligning there? Have another example of someone who had been waiting on a request that someone in another department gave them over 2 years ago. And so they've been frustrated for 2 years. They met with myself and the superintendent, and we both looked at them and say, we have not heard nothing about this. 2 years. Yes, we came and we talked to them downstairs. Who are them downstairs? Right? Who are them downstairs? We don't know them downstairs, right? There's a lot of them downstairs. So those type of elements. So sometimes when you're working, being able to say, this is my program, and these are the type of individuals I'm working with, and the how. The how in terms of how we building it, and being able to ask the question in terms of district culture, school district culture. How familiar are you with those types of elements, right? And community organizations culture. That's something I share with school partners all the time. I shared earlier my background, which have afforded me an interesting lens, right? I see where community partners come from, and I know where school staff is coming from. So I'm often able to troubleshoot where they're missing it at. And so those are things that we look at. But we have another poll up. And the other poll is, do you lack adequate training and support to engage effectively in partnerships? I love it. The majority said no, but it's almost around 50%. Some says yes. I think if I was to dive into this a little deeper, when we begin to start saying training as well as support, they're not synonymous, right? Even though they're intertwined to a great degree. Training, the type of thing where I say around training, and this is a cultural thing that I'm putting out there. School districts, especially ours, answer to mostly every problem is training. You got racism and bigotry, training, right? You're like, this person has a PhD. Yes, but they need more training. So I gave you a cultural thing. So let me make sure I quantify that statement. When we say training in particular, one of it is training on systems navigation. Some of it is training on how to do conflict resolution, how to do specific negotiation when it comes to working with complex systems is something that I say in particular. And within the research, it also included in there with the partnership, it included caregivers. I meet there's quite a few caregivers who are so overwhelmed by trying to come at a system and trying to look at policy, right? Our caregivers can use training in policy because policy is what cements a school district. Regardless to what comes out of a person's mouth, I tell different caregivers, hey, do you know the policy associated with what you're talking about? They say no. I say, here's the policy. And guess what? This is what it says. So when you're going to advocate for yourself, don't go in and talk about how you like them, how you dislike them. Just say policy says. So guess what, community partners? MOU says. That's what you're doing. MOU says. And that kind of says stuff. And because guess what? School districts in particular are going to say MOU says. And so being able to do that, that's what helped to clarify, to clear up certain different types of things that can actually happen within those systems.
And the MOU is a great protection for community organizations. I think of one comes to mind that even happened this year where the school does contribute a little bit of money toward the staff, and the school came back and said, oh, actually, I know we agreed to that, but we can't do that. And I was able to say, oh, well, the MOU says that through 2025, you will be supporting in this way. And that principal was like, okay, that's what we have to do. And so I think that, again, a very good MOU. So things have to, be started from the beginning correctly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yes, totally agree. MOUs, paperwork, identify what's happening, and over communicate. I have to put that out. Over communicate the same thing. And it's so frustrating, but the same thing. This is who we are. This is what we bring. This is what we do. Because if you notice, if you're partnering with school districts, what do? They saying the same thing over and over. That's kind of part of the process. And it's definitely not meant to challenge anybody's intelligence or their expertise or their amount of experience they have in an area. So key strategies that we've been talking about that we'll dive into a little bit more is effective communication, engagement approaches, the power of a shared vision, as well as what it means to use collaboration frameworks or collaborative frameworks. Effective communication. Nicole has been saying this quite a bit. What it means to have successful caregiver to school to community partnerships, effective communication. And we put in, many of you probably know this, so we're not going to dive in it. What it means to actively listen, what it means to give regular updates, what do it means to maintain healthy feedback loops. Healthy feedback loops. And what I mean healthy feedback loops is, how are we maintaining the relationship in light of all the competing interests that goes on within a school? And also culturally, this is something I got to share with the group because individuals, Nicole know I share these particular type of things, but oftentimes individuals don't know this. Community safety is a priority of schools, right? It is a priority of schools. Psychologically, mentally, and emotionally. At the core, what a school district exists for is what, though? Kids sitting in seats, engaging in didactic interactions of education. That always is going to be pushed forward. And then someone would say, well, don't you care about intervention, prevention, and all those things? Yes, but not at the same level as law enforcement, right? Because law enforcement is supposed to serve and protect. Education systems are designed to educate. And so with that, I'm not letting no one off the hook. I believe, and this is research suggests that an unsafe environment is not an environment to where learning can happen anyway, right? I know this, we know these things in particular, but I only do this in particular and I share this sometimes with organizations and even our team, right? Because we do intervention work. This is the core. This is our focus lens. But I share that because that helps us to navigate. So how do we begin to start looking at what the systems require, right? The system viability is on education. And we know that our community partners and some of our programs viability is on intervention prevention program. We make the connection at all times that guess what? We're doing preventions and interventions, and we're guarantee you're going to see increases in academics, attendance, and you're going to see fewer behaviors that disrupt the educational environment so education can go on. Many of you already know this, but I want to make sure I make this plain in particular because I've seen some of our community partners have high level of frustration because they could not be celebrated at the level that they were supposed to be celebrated. And I noticed I said that I've shared with community partners, you do too much valuable work to be undermined, to go into schools and then have places, rooms changed on you and all that stuff. Let's talk, let's structure, let's get an understanding. And I'm going to meet with the community, with the school staff as well to let them know the importance and how it connects to educational outcomes. Engagement approaches, we've been talking about that. The intentional diverse approach, and you may notice that we are vacillating between school organizations, community organizations, and caregivers. That's intentional because that is the work that we're always diving into. Nicole?
So an example that I was thinking of with engagement approaches, so Oscar mentioned earlier that we have the Native Education Department under our Native Education is under our department. And one of the engagement approaches that was innovative that our coordinator came up with was she started a yearly awards ceremony. And it was based off of, it's not based off of GPA, it's not based off of attendance. It was based off of the I think it was the traits or the 7 grandfather traits. And so it was humility, bravery, honesty, wisdom, truth, respect, love. And so with those, she had the schools nominate Native students for those awards. And then we partnered with a Native-led organization to also, as we're braiding funding together for the awards ceremony. And then parents were showing up, and because we're celebrating their students. And so that has been an amazing event, but also it has really brought a lot of connection that was missing before. Because again, when you think about school systems, you get, honor roll and, all of these things that are always awarded, but also, what about character traits? What about, and how do we make sure that these students are feeling seen? So that's just an example of braiding in all of so parents and caregivers and community organizations and our schools.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. And that brings up another partnership element that is extremely valuable. Through the partnership, we know what's good for our communities and what's good for our cultures, but because of the rigidity of the system, there has to be innovative partnerships to really be able to have our ideals realized to the public. And so through that partnership, that's something that happened. Also, in engagement approaches, I put down here community resource fairs, but I want to be careful. I'm not talking about your just a place to where you bring in resources together in relations to mental health services, various food services, housing services, but also what about cultural resources that you bring in there to help educate different people, and what do it means to have them there and presenting in relations to not their cultures, and then school staff is invited in. There are certain school staff, I have to admit, that are very passionate about trying to learn more, but they don't have venues to learn in. We have school staff who want to learn about violence prevention, but they have no venues to really learn it in. So sometimes setting up things to where they can come into the open house, instead of community partners always going to the school, open up doors and say, hey, you want to see how it's done? Come. We'll do a workshop for you. We'll tell you why what we do work and all of that. And trust me, and some of you probably not thinking this, but you can't be replaced. I'm just going to say that again. You can't be replaced. So only thing it's going to do is bolster their ability to appreciate what you do. That's all that's going to happen. Next, shared vision. Oh, we got a chat. We got some in chat. All right, 10 minutes. Whoa, we got to speed it up, Nicole. We got to speed it up. We got to speed it up. I think we're about there. I think we're on time. And we can pause after the next couple anyway, and it's going to be good. A shared vision. This is one that even if we end it here in particular, I think is going to be a good one because we do have to have time for questions, right, Ricardo? I think that's what we want to do. Make sure we have time for questions.
Yeah, and I think the way that you guys have been going is perfectly fine. Folks can just chime in on the chat or whatnot. So just wanted to give you the FYI more than anything. So
okay, thank you. So shared vision, Dr. Karen Mapp. I mean, many of you may be familiar with it. If you're not familiar with her, I recommend you looking at. She has a framework that you want to look at. What makes her so important as an African American leader is that she embodies the school perspective as well as community's perspectives and put it into a framework. Joyce Epstein's, who I love, my research is on, she looks primarily from the community perspective. And so I like to look at multiple ones, but in looking at a shared vision, I ultimately say it leads to a sense of purpose and direction. When you got a shared vision, it's a lot easier to deal with competing things that goes on. And a shared vision, and I should have said co-created vision. Sometimes having those town halls, having those meetings with providers that work in a particular area and having lead school staff to say that, you know, what is your vision for a safe environment? And having many of you in the room and say, what is your vision for a safe community can be so valuable if you can bring that information together and everybody come up with a shared vision. Nicole, you have something in there? Okay. Okay. So with things we had talked about in particular, and we have more slides, but this may be a great place to kind of conclude with these bullet points because we've kind of hit on all these elements. I'm going to say moving to a place to where we can understand organizational culture. And I'm not just saying for community providers to do that. I'm saying for also education systems to do that. Organizational culture of community partners. Identify mutual benefits. How is each partner benefiting from this interaction that's going on, this partnership? Formalize the partnership, MOUs in particular. We talked about that earlier. Get the memorandums of understanding together because when conflicts happen, because they will, you're going to be able to resolve them quickly. And in regards to navigating policies, procedures, and bureaucracies, kind of talked about that a little bit. I will end that particular portion by saying, community partners, many of you know policies and procedures of schools. I recommend constantly stand afresh on that knowledge in particular because they're being updated and there'll be particular leverage points that you can use within school policy that can get your programming even more into schools, right? Like if some schools trying to prevent certain types of violence because they got reports about the sense of belonging through panorama survey, if you use that may be your touch point. Nicole.
I think the other way to find out how to kind of, I'm going to say almost code switch your organizational wording into district language is school board meetings. So at school boards, they develop the key initiatives that they want the schools to be working on. So if you can fit your programming into the key initiatives that they're wanting to show for student success. I think that that's also, you know, again, another through tie to this is what we're doing and this is how this is going to help you achieve this goal.
Definitely. And in somewhat on that point, Nicole, piggybacking off of that before we pause and just do some questions in particular, is I would say, and I want to acknowledge that all school districts are not the same like all community partner organizations. There are different things that are happening politically across the country right now that lends itself to tough works for schools as well as community partners. Just know that we're feeling your pain. I'm just going to say we're feeling your pain, and we're very much so in a place of constantly trying to figure out how we're going to navigate this political landscape around, for all intent purposes, I don't know if it's intended to, but definitely tries to block some of the work and prevent us from having the type of conversations we need to have. So I'll say on that note, you know, Ricardo, everyone, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having us here, and we can shift to questions if you want.
But before we do that, Oscar, if you don't mind, maybe you can just have folks at least either your last two slides, and I know you have some reference points in there,
Yes.
and I know that's always a point of interest for folks. It's just to see some of the things that they can refer to as well, and if there's any that you want to uplift, you know, any more, by all means, feel free to do that as well.
Absolutely. So what I listed was, up to that point, I listed down key frameworks because you heard me constantly saying frameworks to use. I believe even while going through them, for me, frameworks helped me to get a shared vision and have shared knowledge when we rolled it out, and it being the template or at least the document that we use to ground ourselves and center ourselves so we could have a sense of one accordness, I would say, or unity around topics. And so we was about there. So our contact and your references, I have references there in particular for you. Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Do folks have any additional questions or thoughts that you want to share? If so, definitely please let us know in the chat. While that's happening, just want to just take a second just to acknowledge Oscar and Nicole. Just absolutely wonderful. Really appreciate the share. I feel like I'm back in graduate school and not at all upset about it, especially on a Friday. So yeah, I want to echo the thoughts in the chat. Just extremely informative. Really appreciate the passion and engagement that both of you bring around this issue. Again, it's a topic area that I know sites are looking to make inroads in. As you both have acknowledged, it's challenging. It requires persistence. It requires making sure that you're talking to the right people so that you don't have one understanding for 2 years and someone has a completely different understanding. But really appreciate the examples and all the different things that you've highlighted. And yeah, I'll ask if there's anything else in the chat that folks might want to share as well.
Cool.
And if there are none, Oscar and Nicole, I'll let you have any kind of closing thoughts as well.
Cool. Well, I'll say again, thank you very much for having me. And Ricardo, I had to confess, my last webinar, which was, I think last Friday, was 3 hours long. So I was ready. I was ready. I don't know if everybody was ready, but I was ready. I was ready to go. It was getting wounded up. But no, I'll say for everybody who's working in this particular area, you're so needed. And I'll say, even though we don't know you personally, we value the work that you're doing. And as we lend our experiential knowledge or anything that we have in particular, know that we do it from a place of not just camaraderie, but we do it from a place of knowing that this work is tough. We do it from a place of saying that if we got anything that's going to help you to serve our kids, our families, our communities, we want to do that. So thank you for having me.
Oscar closed us both out. He's great at that. Thank you all for having us today.
Thank you all so much. And as you exit, you'll see a survey. It's very brief, less than 60 seconds. Please just take a few seconds just to complete that survey. We value everyone's feedback, and everyone have a wonderful Friday morning / afternoon, wherever you are. Goodbye for now.